The winter meetings are over, and what did we learn? Not a whole lot, because nothing ever happens at the winter meetings. We did learn that the Guardians obviously won the draft lottery. We learned that a lot of people are paying attention to the MLB draft for the first time ever in Cleveland, and we're going to talk about it a lot. So if you're just now learning about the draft lottery and MLB draft, welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about it a lot over the next 7 months.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. Hello, I am Jeff. Over there is Justin. We've had such big numbers. I think it is probably important we keep resetting who we are this week. It's some people's least favorite thing we do, even more than my coughing or us talking over each other through the years, is us telling our backstory. But so many new listeners over the past week, I think it is necessary to keep doing it. Before this podcast, which again, I'll say I'm one of the OG hosts on the MLB side of things. When they started with baseball, I came in with Detroit hosts number 4 ago, old and strong. But before that, I was a lead draft and prospect analyst at 24/7, and before that at Scout. And I currently write for blanking on where I write for now.
Prospects Live.
Just I am on so much cold medication. It's not even funny. So we'll see how this episode goes. I can't even remember where I'm writing now. And I got my start working for Tony Lastoria over at what we were originally was Indians Prospect Insider.
I was briefly at Indians Baseball Insider, and then I was also the managing editor of Guardians Baseball Insider when that changeover made. Before that, I was with the News Herald and a bunch of other every Cleveland baseball blog you can remember that was out there. It's going back to 2007, so it's been quite a long time. We both made cut our teeth covering the minor league system for the Cleveland franchise, the draft. More you than me as far as the draft is concerned. And I'm also still freelancing for the News Herald, covering the Guardians and doing Prospects Live Prospects, and the publisher of the Next Year in Cleveland newsletter, where we do prospect content pretty much daily. So if you are new here, we do go deep on prospects in the draft here, which, hey, that's good timing for us. The Guardians did win the draft lottery at the winter meetings this past week. Probably look, this is probably the most exciting thing that's going to happen in the offseason. I say that 100%. Because things were already looking pretty. It is exciting. Things were looking pretty grim. Like we said this a couple shows ago, that this team needed some sort of jolt this offseason, and maybe it'll still come in the way of a trade. Hard to say, but with the TV deal thing still kind of on ice and in court, we don't really know what's going to happen. This was a much needed change for them. And, it's not an immediate change. It's not going to change how things work tomorrow. It's not going to change how things work in April. They can only change how things work in April. Even this year, the earliest it's really going to impact Cleveland is 2025, right? Like that's about as early as you can expect that. I know that's hard for some people to hear. And look, the fact that there's even a chance that Cleveland could draft somebody in this coming draft next July, and they could be, we're even talking about the possibility of them being able to impact the big league team in 2025 is a huge thing for them. It's a huge difference for the sport over the last couple of years. And it would also be a big change for Cleveland, as they've been very conservative with prospects that aren't pitchers. They've been aggressive with pitching in terms of movement there, but not hitting. So, but the fact that we're talking about they could draft an impact bat in 2024 and they could be here in 2025 is a welcome development. It's a big change for the sport. It's a big change for Cleveland. And that's why we're excited about it. And we've noticed over the last couple of days, there's a lot of people in Cleveland who don't know how the draft works. And while it's kind of annoying to hear the old tropes in the comments, and I get why people are mad, and I get why people are
can't you just enjoy a happy thing? Can't people just enjoy a little bit of happiness without immediately like ranting and screaming, and just especially when you don't rant and scream about things you have no idea about, because then it just
that's what I was gonna say. Like, come on. if you want to be mad, there are plenty of reasons to get mad about this franchise and the way they operate. Whether it's being conservative, not spending money, how they have deployed players in the last couple of years, all that stuff is legitimate gripe. The one thing that really, if you don't know about, is this team spends money in the draft. They always do. You can't trade draft picks. Nobody has ever punted a draft so bad they took somebody like so far off the board just to save money. Cleveland has not signed a first round pick since 2001 with Alan Horn, and that was just him refusing to take their bonus. Whole situation. So before you get mad about stuff, like Jeff said, let's enjoy something positive for once. This has a chance to be a major impact, and we're going to continue to talk about why this has a chance to be a major impact. But also, I said before this week, allow yourself to enjoy something. There are not a lot of spots in this franchise right now. Like, you can get excited about Jose sign his extension, and I know they haven't done a great job building around him, and they have this great young pitching staff, and they have a good closer. They did sign a second $100 million deal for Andres Gimenez. There aren't that many things to get excited about.
Sox have ever given.
Yeah. Good job, Andrew Benintendi, or whoever signed to that contract. But
allow
yourself to get excited, right? It's okay to get excited about this. But
again,
before anything else,
like
Jeff said, don't go out there and don't spew stuff that's just absolutely untrue. And that holds true for some media people, by the way. There are some media people out there who are putting stuff out into the
lying
universe that's so wrong.
So, two quick things. Again, for everyone, I'm not going to debate Dolan's ownership, and I'm also not going to hold water for them. We got Jerry Reinsdorf, who won't pay any of his players, and is also meeting with the mayor of Nashville to put extra pressure on the team when they're in town. So, he wants to compete for that worst owner title. And with the Angeloses, potentially looks like selling Baltimore, that's going to get a lot easy for him. But yeah, I mean, there was someone who is a media member who just thrives on I don't know if he gets a good uptick, if it's just that there are a lot of angry Guardians fans when it comes to money, but he sits there and harps on the dumbest things. I think he writes fanfic involving Jesus Aguilar, very steamy stuff with the way he talks about Jesus. Jesus Aguilar had one outstanding year, and I looked at the second half was still like a 110. It's just the first half was a 160 in terms of weighted runs created plus, but it was essentially 1 year, and he's acting like the guy was an all-star. But he this media member, BP will say, I want to get myself in trouble, but he went out and said, that first overall pick, those players signed for bigger bonuses than the Guardians gave their entire draft, which is categorically and completely false. The Guardians have always spent more than last year was the highest bonus ever given to a player. Paul Skeens at 9.2. Cleveland spent nearly 11 million last year. They've spent over 10 million every single year. So here's a member of the media who is trying to dive into the rage for whatever reason. This guy has an axe to grind. Met him once. I always tell you about all the great people I meet in media, how, Melissa Lockhart was a fantastic editor. How Mayo and Callis have been generous with their time. Sickles as well. I've never talked about this media because of that experience. So there's that level of it too, I'm going to say. And, but it's just like, it's either the guy is clueless or he's lying. So do your responsibility, check the person, see if, there's anything to it. Go research me. If you don't believe me, go look at how much Cleveland spent last year. I could probably pull up exactly
on YouTube. We have it scrolling.
Yeah. I mean,
if you're watching on YouTube, we've made an effort to put more information into our graphics on YouTube.
I know this because every year I do a shadow draft for the Guardians draft, and they're often not very good. Not as good as the Guardians. They do better than me. I think I got maybe 1 year that I got a chance to beat them. We'll see if that happens. But having done this every year, I can tell you they always spend. Outside of 2020, which is a weird year with limited picks, it was harder to kind of, they had the guys they liked. They got the guys they liked. But you only had 5 rounds. It was a weird year. I'm not going to count that against them. And I will say this, like, you go back to those early 2000s, they kind of stuck with the slot around the 2011 with Lindor. Like, I mean, that year they went crazy. They spent, I think, second or third or fourth highest when that was an uncapped year. They realized that this was a way that they could make hay, trust their scouting and development. And this is the area they spend. So anyone who's saying they're going to trade the pick, you can only trade and someone asked, why can't you trade picks? Mostly it is because no one wanted to trade picks. I'll go back to a confirmed story. In the 1990s, the San Francisco Giants signed Michael Tucker, not because they wanted Michael Tucker, the outfielder, but because by signing him, they'd forfeit their first rounder, and they didn't want to pay a first round pick. They didn't think it was worth the cost. So teams in the late 90s were doing this. I had that confirmed. I'll, again, go back. Melissa Lockhart confirmed that for me when I threw out that story, and she's been covering the Bay Area for, longer than I have been writing. She's very in the know, fantastic human and sports writer. But yeah, teams didn't really have an interest for a long time. Teams were punting picks. The Reds drafted Jeremy Sowers out of high school, knowing he'd never sign, so they wouldn't have to pay him. Like they knew they could not.
They
sign.
would have gotten him signed.
They took him in the first round out of high school, knowing he would not sign, knowing he was a hard commit to Vanderbilt and was unsignable. This type of stuff used to happen. It's only recently, so it's with the addition of those competitive balance picks, which are based on market size. I believe in terms of just overall market size, and then is it like Metro? I can't remember the second facet of it off the top of my head, but there's
I'm not sure
what, like 10 teams get those picks. Cardinals used to be one of them, so they've shrunk down exactly what gets you those picks, but those picks can be traded. So
Cleveland will always probably get one. So.
And yeah, Cleveland will always get one. But for Cleveland, the only time they've been involved with the trade was when they gave up their Comp B pick in that Carlos Santana, Edwin Encarnacion deal. We're going to talk a little more drafts before we talk a little bit more, a lot of things. But we got to take a break and come back on today's Locked On Guardians. Lots of good stuff on the way.
Lots of good stuff you can do on FanDuel right now. If you're a new customer, you can take advantage of this great deal. As things get colder, the NFL offers are hot on FanDuel. $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet if you're a new customer. So if you're a new customer, find a game you like. NFL, anything. I don't think it has to just be NFL, but find a money line bet, put $5 on it if you're a new customer, and if you win, you get $150 in bonus bets after that. If they win. So if you think about joining FanDuel, this is a great opportunity to put some money into your account and, make some bucks on it and buy yourself a nice gift for the holidays. Buy someone in your family a nice gift for the holidays. Lots of bowl games to pick from coming up here soon. It's a fun time of year to try to make some money or add some excitement. Even if your team, if you're maybe an Ohio University fan or you went to college there, or if you didn't, you could put some money on them in the bowl and maybe make some money off of that. And if you're not really into money line bets, other things you can do too: spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get in on the action, the NFL and bowl season. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL. Before we get into draft stuff too, going to be a lot of draft stuff over the next couple months. I think you can expect a lot of interesting draft stuff over on Locked On Sports today on YouTube. It is the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. We've got all of our local experts over there, plus our national shows covering every league. So our pal Sully at Locked On MLB, Locked On Prospects with Lindsey Crosby. Check over there. Subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. That's Locked On Sports today on YouTube. Jeff, couple final thoughts here on the lottery and all this. So yes, you can't trade picks except for the comp pick. Everything else is untradeable. Just do your research before spouting off. Like if you're going to go out and say stupid things and sound like you're smart or confident, just don't make yourself look bad. And verify accounts too. Same thing. This goes for anything this time of year. The other thing I'll say too, I think is, I know this is going to sound biased because Cleveland just won the lottery. I think the lottery works because, look, they were trying. The goal of the lottery was to disincentivize tanking, right? That was the whole.
The Athletics just pulled off the movie Major League in real life. They were tanking,
and they didn't take it. Well, they took advantage because they're going to be leaving Oakland, whatever.
But
they tried to tank, and they're picking 4th overall, and they can't pick in the top 10 next year now, so that doesn't really help them either.
I like that. I'm fine with this.
I think it works. I think the Reds last year were in the playoff race until the end of the year. They went 82-80. They're picking 2nd overall. This disincentivized tanking. If you want your team, I mean, I know the more you lose, the more lottery odds you get. But guess what? Cleveland still found a way to get the top pick, and so did the Reds, finished in 2nd. So if you're looking to disincentivize tanking, I think this is so far seems to be working. And I'll say it again. I like the fact that Cleveland has the number 1 overall pick for us. but I also like it for the fact that they didn't have to lose 100 games to do it. It would have been a massively harder year to talk about. It was already hard enough as it was, but it would have been harder if they had to go out and lose 100 games, and they didn't. So that's nice. We have some other interesting draft thoughts right now. Kind of questioning if the Guardians draft strategy is going to shift. And there's two layers to this. One is that obviously they're going to have more money to play with than they ever have before. That could change how they do things. Also, it appears they might have a new scouting director. This hasn't been announced yet, but I don't know. Paul Hoynes wrote in his article covering the lottery after everything played out that Ethan Purser is the new scouting director. He has been for 4 days.
Zach Meisel talked about that in his article today too.
Okay, so that hasn't been officially announced, but Paul and Zach are not going to write that if it's not true. So it appears Ethan Purser, who has been with the organization since late 2016, has now risen up to be the new director of amateur scouting. So previously, it was Scott Barnsby from 2017 to I guess most recently, possibly. Before that was Brad Grant, 2007 to 2016. Before that was John Mirabelli, which we don't want to talk about because it will just burn a hole in our heads because he was terrible.
It was not great.
It was not good. So yeah, who is Ethan Purser? Let's talk about him a little bit. He came over from Tampa Bay.
At the end writer before that, one of the many writers in the system.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Apparently, you and I just weren't good enough.
Yeah, I guess not. We're still podcasting, and Cleveland's hiring all the baseball prospectus writers. They've got a couple. They got a bunch of Baseball America guys. Mostly.
Yeah, Baseball America. They started with the prospectus has not been the pipeline it once was.
Yeah, it's more Baseball America these days.
Yeah, now it's a Baseball America is the pipeline.
Yeah. So, but Purser was at Baseball Prospectus before as a writer. He was with the Rays in 2015, 2016. He's been with Cleveland since then, serving as an area scout and a pro scout. And then was a coordinator for amateur scouting. And then the last couple of years, he was the assistant director to amateur scouting. So promotion for him looks like that. I guess that means they haven't announced anything, but I guess that means a promotion for Scott Barnsby. Brad Grant is still here. I don't know, but it is curious. It is interesting to see how the strategy will change. I think that's one thing people don't really realize, Jeff, is that the GM might have some say over what happens or some kind of role in this. But Chris Antonetti already said after they won the lottery that, he said, I'm not going to be involved. We have a lot of great guys to do this. Amateur scouting and the GM generally, I'm sure they talk, but obviously the amateur scouting team generally does the legwork here. So a lot of people don't realize the GM might sit in on some things, set some things, and push things in a certain direction, but the amateur scouting team really runs things. And that is where the strategy comes from mostly. You could see that Chris Antonetti, if you're watching on YouTube, Chris Antonetti was pretty fired up about the draft. I've never seen him that animated before, by the way.
He just kept talking about how he never thought this would happen. Like he just didn't think it was a possibility. Never even really let it enter his mind.
Yeah. So do you, I guess we don't know how to answer this yet. If you're watching on YouTube, we've got a little scrolling list of notable picks by Scott Barnsby and Brad Grant. And I think we should spend a lot of time this offseason doing some draft reviews and seeing how things might change or how things have changed. But I am curious to see if things change under Ethan Purser or not, how things play out. We might have one of his scouts on the show here in the next few weeks. We'll find out. But yeah, things could always change. Everyone has a different idea. This could lead them in a different direction. Things have kind of changed. Last year's draft was certainly different. They still took a lot of,
I don't know. Was it that?
Guys.
After the first two rounds, it was a Guardians draft to a T. Ralphie was a bit of a surprise, and Clemmy to some degree, though we have seen them go with prep pitchers, but everyone after them was just lock, stock, and two Guardian barrels.
Yeah. Well, not that Ethan has anything to do with the Rule 5 draft because they took Davis and De Los Santos, but I'll be curious to see if there's any shift in strategy because things didn't really change much under Scott Barnsby over the years. Like he was pretty much the same through and through. And I guess that it, jives with what happened in 2023. There was a lot of shifting in Brad Grant's tenure. Like they went from very college heavy early on, and then the Lindor draft happened and all that, and then they still went kind of college. It wasn't really until the end of his time that they started going a little prep heavier.
The next year they took Naquin to use that money on all those prep kids.
Right.
The Devon McClurries, they went day 2 of that draft was almost all prep. It might have been all prep, honestly. So they went extremely prep that year. And then, you still had the Clint Frazier as a high school pick. And then, the year they signed Edwin, you had Quentin Holmes and Freeman were 2 high school picks.
Yeah.
So they had some. It was definitely, I remember being the only person mocking Clinton Frazier to them in the draft. Everyone had Colin Moran there because Cleveland's a hyper-conservative team. They're not going to draft anyone. And I'm like, they just took Lindor like a few years ago. This could happen. But, they go back and forth. They do go really college heavy. It makes them hard when I look at data to figure out. But teams typically follow patterns and have defined approaches. And the one thing I'll say is unless there's a big shakeup at the top or you bring in someone from the outside, often when a scouting director changes, it's more of the same.
Yeah, because especially when you promote from within, right?
Yeah.
Because this is not I don't know for sure, but I'd have a hard time imagining, at least for Cleveland, they have not hired a scouting director from outside the organization. Because Mirabelli, Scott Barnesby, all internally promoted. Brad Grant before that, like all these guys are internally promoted. Same with Purser now. So yeah, things may not change a whole lot too. And obviously, Jeff, you know a lot more about drafting than I do. But 2 things that I think always hold true is, you can't, when it comes to strategy, you cannot. I don't know if this is the right analogy, but put a square peg into a round hole. Like you can't. You have to draft to the strength of the class. You can't just go out and make picks based on. You have to draft towards whatever the strength is. You have to go out there and find players you can develop. So you can't pull from players that just don't exist or don't really fit. If it's a bad college pitcher class, which Cleveland usually does with, they have to pivot. You can't just pick college pitchers if they're not going to fit, if they're not good. Like you have to draft from what's available to you. And the other thing is too, a lot of this falls on best player available. Like in generally in the MLB drafts, you pick the best player available. That's they pick one. Sometimes that does depend on money if you want to spread the money down towards the bottom of your draft. But you draft by your board. You put your board together and you draft the best player available on your board, unless something crazy happens, like you said. That's the other thing too. I want to ask about more aggressiveness. We talked about is all this money they're going to have available to them going to make them more aggressive? Like I talked about the night they won the lottery, that doesn't seem like it's going to be a good amateur class, but we'll find out more as the spring hits. But can they buy more players down? Can they call around and say, we're willing to offer this prep pitcher $2 million at the comp B pick, and if the teams above them get that call from that advisor, not scout, advisor or agent, and they say, hey, Cleveland's willing to offer $2 million. Are you going to offer $2 million? No. Well, then my client's not signing. They hang up and that pick slides down to 36. Are we going to see more of that possibly?
It's always a possibility. The best example I can think of that is Nolan Jones. They went underslot with Will Benson at his slot and then gave Nolan Jones just a little bit less than they gave Will Benson. And everyone was kind of shocked when Nolan Jones was still on the board. I actually had Jones ahead of Benson on my big board.
Everybody, I think a lot of people did.
It was kind of back and forth. Well, the problem at the time was Will Benson, like he had like a 20 grade hit tool when he was in high school. But he worked his tail off I just didn't know if it was ever going to work. But again, it's work ethic plus amazing physical tools. But they did that, and that's how they got Nolan Jones, and they essentially got 2 first-round talents. And I've talked about this
guy down the board with an offer. Yeah.
And in this case, and it's not going to be so much because again, Spencer Torkelson, who people are like acting like this guy is phenomenal. He was good so last year, but he was 30 home runs does not make you good. If you got an on-base percentage under 300, that's an issue. But Spencer Torkelson is the only player to get full slot in that first round, almost in the first overall pick. Basically doesn't happen hardly ever. And, we'll have to see how it plays out. But when you do something like they did with Benson and Jones, it's the MLB equivalent of the trade down. You're not actually changing positions, but you're saving money with that first pick. Taking a guy like Benson wasn't really top 20 on anyone's board. He was more 20 to 35 range. But they got Jones, who was also kind of like 15 to 30 range in round 2. So they got two guys that were top 30 range in the top 50 picks. So they made that choice to kind of move down in terms of how they spent. You don't actually shift on the board, but the pool system was kind of the equivalent of that. We got to take our second break here, don't we?
You sure do. It's been a lot to talk about. We've got one more. You got to wrap up the winter meetings a little bit and talk about what's coming up as we finish up today's episode. All right, plenty of more time to talk draft. I'm telling you, we're gonna talk a lot of draft over the next 7 months. So I hope anybody here enjoys that, and it's a big deal. The winter meetings are over. Things sort of happened. The lottery was the biggest deal for Cleveland. They added Davis and De Los Santos in the Rule 5 draft, the Major League portion. They didn't lose anybody in the Major League portion, but some headlines here. So what did we learn this week, Jeff? The Guardians say, or there's reports saying the Guardians are listening on Emmanuel Clase as well as Bieber. We knew about Bieber. The Clase thing is due diligence. I feel like if somebody comes in, look, I will not be surprised if he does get traded, only because the only way he'd be traded is if someone comes in and blows them away. But this is a creative team. You never say never, but I still would be surprised. I guess I would be surprised. I'm not surprised if he gets traded, but I also don't think he will, if that makes any sense. Obviously, the lottery was a big deal. Mike Chernoff had a quote the other day that I know a lot of people are going to be upset by, that he said that they talked about how the offense was ranked 27th in baseball and they've got to improve that this year. But he said a lot of offensive improvement has to come from within with the young roster, all that stuff. And Angels, Cubs, and Reds possible suitors for Bieber. We should talk about whether or not if anything has changed on Bieber.
And I think it's also worth going back to, we talked about an article earlier this week that came out where the internal feeling is that they're probably not going to trade Bieber. He's probably that they're not going to trade any of these guys. So that, a degree of it is, okay, Oscar Gonzalez, Steven Kwan, and Andres Jimenez all had some data that pointed to regression. Rough second year. And I think they're kind of hoping there'll be some bounce backs with, Kwan was strictly average last year. They're hoping for him to be above average as a hitter with his on-base skills and some doubles pop and stuff like that. Jimenez also average, hoping to get him above that. And you're hoping like a Will Brennan can rebound. I mean, you and I have talked about this many times. People took the wrong lesson. The Guardians didn't trade away Benson and Jones because they really liked Oscar Gonzalez. They did it because Will Brennan was the dude for them. And it didn't work out for Will Brennan this year. So we got to see what he can do. So I think they're still going to count on Brennan. I really think that outfield is Brennan, Laureano, and in Kwan for next year, with Shaw as your backup fourth outfield platoon type. That is where it's going to be. I think there is a little bit of money to spend. I think they'll wait on the wings and see if there's anything available. But yeah, I'll say this as one of the biggest fans of Taylor Ward, the sports writer, and Taylor Ward, the baseball player. I would strongly consider a trade for him if the Angels were willing to do Bieber for Ward. To me, because here's the hard thing with Bieber, we have to functionally realize is he was not good last year, and 2 of the last 3 seasons he's been hurt. He's going to cost $12 million, and there's no guarantees with him. And it's 1 year of club control. And, great. Let's say the Angels acquire him and they do that deal. At the end of the year, they're getting like a 2nd round pick for him at best, maybe a 4th if they decide to spend. Like there isn't quite the same value because not every team gets a 1st rounder anymore for those guys. So Bieber's value is just not super high.
Yeah, I mean, there are teams that are definitely interested, and it's going to be anybody. It's going to be teams that miss out on Jordan Montgomery, and it's going to be teams that miss out on trading for Corbin Burns, and I don't even know if it's going to come down to Yamamoto. Yeah, he's such a different animal, though. So I don't know, and so it's going to come down to that.
Teams, I've heard the same story with other teams. Like we thought it wasn't going to be a flooded market, but a lot of teams are willing to trade people. I'm trying to remember what team I literally saw. Like, they're saying they're not going to trade him, but it feels like they're just saying that until they'll go back and start talking pitcher trades after Yamamoto comes off.
Yeah, so things might have to develop a little more. I still think there's a good chance that Bieber gets traded just because.
See, I'm leaning the other way.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any trade coming with this team.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm more 60-40 he gets traded, only because I think enough teams are interested. I think they'll want to get something, and it generally is their MO. I know it's not the best move considering their situation right now, but it also depends too on how frozen they are by this TV situation.
I also feel like I think they know that his value is only going to go up at the deadline. Honestly, it's like if he struggles again,
if he's healthy.
Yeah, I mean, basically barring injury, his value can only go up. It's going to stay consistent, or you just have to. But then I don't know. Like I said, I think it's interesting that the word coming out of the front office is that they think that he will be in their rotation.
I feel like that's them trying to play the game and try to add some value.
They like to have that depth in the rotation. It's like, and he's gone. Xavier Curry is your fifth starter. I don't think that's the road they want to go, because they also can't sign anyone in free agency. They can't add, like, the cost of losing him for whatever you get minus having to replace him, I think just makes it a position that they're probably not trading from.
I guess we'll find out. All right, Jeff, this is the last week of the year for us to be 5 episodes a week. We may do more than 5. We may do more than we go usually on a 3 days a week coming up here soon. We may do more than 3. We'll see what happens, but we've got lots to talk about. Obviously, more draft stuff. Let's make a deal with all 20 on their teams. We'll see what we can find for the Guardians in the trade market. We got more positional reviews to do from 2023. And another thing we haven't discussed yet, I just brought this up today that I haven't told Jeff, but trade value rankings on the Guardians roster and probabilities they get traded. So stay tuned for all that, more draft stuff. We'll do some mailbags, all fun stuff. As even if we do 3 days a week, we still got a lot of content coming your way.
100%. And I have some stuff to point out, like what are the most successful places? What are the most interesting places for the draft, and what Cleveland can do to maximize that pick, as well as
we got some interviews coming up too, hopefully.
Yeah. So we're working through things. There's a lot going on. It's going to be a fun time, a fun ride. Join us. We got some bonus episodes that'll be YouTube only this weekend, just because they were us doing some crossovers. So keep your eyes peeled. Thank you for being an everyday or joining us every day in the comments, like Steven, who always pops up in those comments. Thank you. Remember to rate and review. It's been a long time since we had an iTunes review. Those help a lot. And go Guardians, go.